Hey everyone, my name's Chris Giraldo, and I am doing this with Jason, and we're going to talk about my journey in holistic health and how basically we both got into this. But yeah, my whole journey in holistic health essentially started from bodybuilding, paradoxically. As weird as that sounds, I was an athlete my whole life. I wanted to go to the NFL, and then I ended up getting injured. I subluxated my left shoulder. I fully dislocated my right shoulder. I'd broken my finger. I've had so many injuries. And even though I had D1 offers to go to college and play football, I was very discouraged because when you take serious injuries, it's very discouraging and demoralizing to your confidence, right? And it's not so much about like, I'm afraid of getting hurt. It's just more so like I can't play as aggressive as I normally am. And it kind of damages your ego. So, when I got to college, I was kind of like, I don't really feel like playing football anymore. And I stayed close to home. And that's when I didn't really know what to do. Like my identity was a little bit like reset. And that's when I found bodybuilding. And when I got into bodybuilding, I started lifting weights. I started putting on a lot of muscle. I started doing bodybuilding shows, and I was like 18 years old. And everyone was like, wow, you're extremely developed for an 18-year-old. That's amazing. And back then, I was just lifting and eating. I didn't know anything about minerals. I didn't know anything
Yeah.
about, I knew like simple nutrition stuff, but it was just more so like the bro science behind things. And around 2018 or 2000, yeah, around 2017, I started getting into like anabolics and taking testosterone and, doing HRT and because I wanted to go pro, I wanted to be an IFBB pro. And I was doing that for 2 years. I was completely fine. I didn't have any side effects. I was doing it the right way. I bought a book called Anabolics by William Elquin. I think that's how you say his name. But it's a very big like Bible. It's like an encyclopedia about everything anabolics and peptides. And ironically, I've never taken peptides, but
Oh, we gotta
yeah,
have a conversation about that one, bro.
yeah, I know. I've never taken any peptides, ironically, which is weird, but I've taken almost every anabolic. I'm one of those individuals who likes to I like to read things before I try something.
Yeah.
So, some people like to just take advice or hire a coach from somebody. I like to read it and understand why it works in the body the way it does. So I did anabolics for a year and a half to try to go pro. That didn't happen. And next thing you know, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to take my first cycle ever while bulking. And, ignorantly enough, I was bulking off of junk food, right? And I did my first cycle ever off junk food. Obviously, you have exacerbated anabolic pathways opened up. So anything in your body grows much faster. And I was eating almost a box of cereal per day.
It's a
And I was
lot of junk.
yeah, it's a lot of junk. I was eating a box of cereal per day. I was eating a lot of like regular food plus
Yeah.
processed junk food. And within a matter of like 2 months of, taking anabolics while also growing, because the entire time I was taking it to lean out, I grew a tumor on my face. And I had a giant tumor that hollowed out like half of my jawbone, like all
Dude,
of
I
it.
saw those x-rays. I was like, yo, your jawbone could have like snapped in half. Like that's how
Yes.
hollow it was.
Yeah, that's what they told me. They said if I would've got hit in the face,
It
my
would have
jaw
just
would have
broke.
shattered. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I not only had it hollowed out completely by the tumor, I also had a parotid gland infection that almost like leaked into my brain. So they said it was like very deadly. Yeah.
Wow.
The one of the first opinion doctor, he like out when he saw the x-rays and he was like, oh my God, like we're gonna have to take like bone from your hip and then like cut your jawbone open and then like remodel it. Dude, I
Oh
was
my.
I was devastated. I was
Yeah.
crying.
Yeah, of
And
course.
after that, I was like, I'm gonna
Well,
see.
you would have been what, like 21? Like how old were you?
I was 20. I think I was 21 or 22. This was
Yeah,
2000.
that's wild, bro. That's scary at that
Yeah,
age.
at a young age.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So I'm over here. I'm young, and they're talking about remodeling my face,
Yeah.
and I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. So,
Mhm.
I found the third opinion. I went to a doctor in the University of Miami. He specializes in like bone regeneration stuff like that. So instead of them doing that, he injected this. It's called BMP, bone morphogenetic protein, and it helped refill the bone lining of my jaw.
Yeah. Right.
But after that happened, while I was in the hospital for almost 5 months, in and out, these guys are feeding me like Ensure, Coca-Cola,
Garbage. Pure
just
garbage.
straight garbage, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"I'm not drinking any of that."
It's
And I
like how here's the system, right? The system of like, yeah, we want you to get better, but we're just gonna feed you shit that keeps you
yes.
coming in here, you know?
Yeah. And that was upsetting me because I'm like, how am I supposed to get like, and I wasn't consuming it, but it was just it was the principle of them
Yes.
actually having the nerve and audacity
Yeah,
to feed me trash. And
totally.
that was upsetting to me because even though like, yeah, I was still in my bodybuilder mindset, I was
Mhm.
still pretty conscious and knowledgeable enough to be like, sugar equals inflammation, which ironically, it's like it
Well,
hit
you
me.
had a tumor which is fed by
Yeah.
sugar. Like, how is giving you sugar gonna solve this problem
Exactly,
that we're
and
trying to
that's when it
fix?
clicked. That's
Yeah,
when it clicked because the minute I had that, I'm like, "I did this to myself." So I was
yeah.
like, I don't want any more sugar." After that, after I got out of the hospital, long story short, that's when I embarked on this whole journey of holistic health. I started reading a lot of books about each different little mineral. I read the book The Mineral Fix by Dr. James DiNicotonio. That
Yeah,
set me on a path of a whole bunch of other books. I read
yeah.
the book The Iodine Crisis, The Copper Revolution, Cure Your Fatigue by Morley Robbins.
We've read all the same ones.
Yes. I've
Yeah,
I've literally in a window from like 2020, I think it was like 2022 to 2022 and 2023, I probably read like 50 health books.
yeah.
And that's when I got into holistic health. I learned about the borax conspiracy. Somebody told me about borax and how it's
Mhm,
literally
mhm.
just a salt of boron.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I got into that and I'm like, "Man, this is incredible." Like, all this information, I didn't even know this back in fitness. I didn't know the
Mhm,
importance of copper. I didn't know the importance of
mhm.
iodine. I didn't know the importance of selenium, magnesium, all
Yeah,
these different things.
yeah.
Imagine if I would have knew that back then,
Totally,
you
totally.
know? So
Imagine one, how much healthier people would be, but then also on a fitness side of things, how much easier it is to achieve fitness goals and move along the side of performance when the body's actually mineralized. Like, it's such a
yes.
simple concept, you know?
Yeah.
So you read all those books and then what?
So after I read those books, I started experimenting all those things on myself.
Right.
And then I
Of
realized that
course.
I was like reversing a lot of issues that I had. Like for example, the first biggest breakthrough that I had was like my testosterone levels
Mhm.
because obviously in the bodybuilding world they say once you go on you could never come off. And I
Yep.
was one of those guys who I was on TRT essentially as a 21-year-old and
Yeah.
I was blasting and cruising and I would cruise on 150 milligrams of test a week.
Right.
And when I came off because I had to come off cold turkey in the hospital, my test levels was 200 and my
Rough.
free test
Rough.
was 2. My free test was 2.
Oh my gosh.
So, when that happened, it was like, cold turkey, I didn't take HCG, I didn't take any Clomid, I didn't take Nolvadex,
Jesus.
I didn't take none of that. I was just
Your
like,
mind was probably so rough right at that point in time, man. Like, it's just like you fall off a cliff.
honestly, not really.
Wow.
As weird as
Wow,
that
okay.
sounds. I think, like, to a certain degree, I think your mindset's very powerful. I think
Yeah.
if you control your mind and you don't let numbers control you, you could remedy the effects of some of the things that you experience. And I'll give you another example later down the line as we talk about, like, copper and anemia.
Yeah.
But, yeah, man, it started from there, and I had a friend tell me about, "What do you think about this this CrossFitter guy or this power lifter who takes borax? Like, it's crazy." And I'm like, "What? Borax?" I'm like, "Let me look into that." And I started looking into him, and, the guy takes a teaspoon of borax per day, and at the moment, I'm like, "This guy's taking laundry detergent. That's so
Detergent.
weird." As I start doing more research, I'm like, wait, it's just a boron salt. It's sodium
Yeah.
borate. And, he's taking 100 milligrams of boron a day or probably more. And
Mhm.
he's talking about how his testosterone level is like 1400. And I'm
Through the
like,
roof. Yeah.
that's like, you're basically like on testosterone.
Yeah.
So I started experimenting with
Dude,
borax.
that's
And
better than TRT for some people.
yeah, no,
Like,
dude,
some
that's
people
way
can't even
better.
do that on TRT. Like,
Dude, on
geez.
TRT, people are like hovering at 800. I'm like,
Exactly.
that's low. That's
Yeah.
not, if you're on TRT, you should be like on 900 or 1,000.
Yeah, for sure.
But, yeah, that after that happened, I remember getting my blood checked once while I was doing the whole borax experiment, and my testosterone was like 1,080, and my free test was very high. And I was
Yeah.
like, "Well, there's
Okay.
something to this. That's weird,"
Yeah.
And, I felt
And this
great.
is you're, like, on the cusp of, like, post bodybuilding, like,
Yes.
holistics, and you're like, "Oh, shit, okay, here's now some evidence that's showing that, like, this is working. Okay."
Yeah, because 'cause I'm like, I didn't take HCG, I didn't take any of
Yeah,
that other shit, I didn't have to inject anything or take any pills, I'm just like,
yeah.
borax and, going outside and come to find out that boron at high doses significantly increases the half-life of vitamin D by almost like 70%. So, if you're out in the sun for 2 hours, that
Mhm.
vitamin D lasts for almost 4 to 6 hours. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm over here. I realize I'm like, wow, that's a crazy breakthrough. And then I came across the book, The Iodine Crisis,
Yeah.
and I started reading that about iodine.
Dude, that book blew my mind, like
Yeah,
blew it. And I had heard of Dr. Brownstein and stuff like that before, but the way Lynn Farrell put it all together and started answering the questions, I was
yeah,
like, wow. And I actually stumbled upon it because I had a client that had, I don't know, many clients that have fibrotic breast tissue. And that was just like something I hadn't quite found a tool on how to fix. And I stumbled upon the book, and lo and behold, like iodine, crazy.
yeah. No, it's crazy because your thyroid hormone essentially is the core of all your hormones. And
Mhm.
growing up, I didn't know anything about iodine. I didn't know anything about your thyroid hormone,
Nobody does.
anything.
Nobody does on this side of the world because iodine comes from raw dairy and seaweed, things that we don't really eat. And then you look at the Asian Pacific populations that eat a ton of seaweed, they don't really have thyroid problems, right? If you look at this demographically, they don't have that really. But why do they not have it? Well, look at their food source compared to like us in the Western world, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, no, I went down that little rabbit hole and I was mind blown. And then I started experimenting with iodine, taking high
So let me
doses,
ask you, how much were you taking at your highest?
100 milligrams a day.
Yeah,
And I felt
crazy,
amazing. I felt
crazy.
really good. And obviously now I don't take 100 milligrams a day. I just take
Yeah, because
50.
you're not deficient. You don't need that kind of dosage, right?
But it happened by accident. That's the funny part. Because I
Okay.
was taking another brand that was just 1 milligram per drop. And
Right.
I was talking to a friend. I'm like, oh, I'm going to experiment with this. I was doing 10 milligrams and then I was doing 20 milligrams. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to do 50 milligrams. But
Yeah.
then I ran out of that drop. And then I'm like, okay, you know what? Let me just buy
Yeah.
Lugal's solution, which is two
Lugos.
and a half milligrams.
Way more potent.
Yeah, it's double. It's double
Yeah.
than each drop is 2.5 milligrams. So I did
Yeah.
that and I did 50 drops with that. And then when I did that, I felt like superhuman. I was like, I need to go run. I need to go do stuff. And my metabolism was just fiery. But the thing is, obviously, the most important thing is I was doing all the right things. Like I was taking
Totally. You
selenium.
had everything in balance. That was the key,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
So I had all the cofactors. And when I did everything and I had the iodine dose that was there, I was doing 100 milligrams. I felt superhuman. And after that, I was
You were taking a ton of salt and detoxing your kidneys at the same time, I'm sure.
yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
my sodium intake was like 8,000, 10,000 milligrams a day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And no
I
blood
was
pressure issues.
no blood pressure issues. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Okay, great. So you went from like the boron borax to the iodine. Where did you go after that?
then after the whole iodine thing, that's kind of when I went down multiple different rabbit holes. I went
At
down
the
the whole
same time.
copper thing. I
Yeah.
went down, the whole vitamin C thing. I also went down the pathway of cartilage regeneration because I told you about my
Mm.
shoulders.
Yes.
And I couldn't even have surgery on my left shoulder. I've had surgery on my right shoulder, but I wanted to fix my left shoulder that I messed up
Yeah.
playing football, and I couldn't do it because I had no labrum. So
Mm.
that's
Mm.
one of the biggest key factors as to why I got into holistic health
Mm.
and understanding optimizing the body as a terrain
Yeah.
because I refuse to believe that cartilage does not regenerate.
Of
Everything in your
course.
body regenerates as long as you
Of
give it the
course.
right environment,
Yep.
you know?
I mean, that's the premise of stem cells, period. That's all
Yes.
Bruce Lipton's work. You take a cell, you put it in a different environment and turns it to something else. It's all about the environmental factors. And, I'm very much on that belief system because I do the same thing. It's like we just need to figure out what the body needs. We give it what it needs and it could start to heal. Simple as
Yes.
that. So on the cartilage aspect of things, like was there any main mineral that you have found that's made the biggest impact, or would you say it's all kind of wrapped in together?
I'd say the two biggest ones was boron and copper,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
boron regulates bone mineralization and bone metabolism, and copper regulates collagen synthesis.
So boron is one that I feel like, people might be a little bit iffy on the borax side of things. Any of my like baby boomer holistic peeps would be like, yeah, I know borax, because they're like of that generation. Our
Yeah,
age people are like, what? You want me to
yeah,
take what?
collagen synthesis.
I'm like, yo, it's like $7 for a box of it. Like it's dirt cheap, versus buying the boron. But anyways, so the boron, I feel like people are more open with. Copper. Copper is something that people are just hearing about. Copper toxicity, just shed a little bit of light on what on that side of things that, has, you're really shifting people's perspective, at least mine for sure, on copper. Yes, I read Jason Hummel's Copper Revolution, but I feel like, taking 10 different things, it just got really messy. Yet here you are and putting it all into a concise product. So maybe explain copper toxicity and like, some of the myths around that first.
Yeah, so what's actually funny is I was on another podcast in 2023 and I actually mentioned copper toxicity because I was ignorant back then. And that's the thing, like I'm always educating myself. Like I might say something one day and then the next day I'll be like, you know what, I was actually wrong about that.
Hmm.
So copper toxicity is one of those things that a lot of people they misconstrue because I even made a post about this on my story, how every single toxic side effect that you get from taking a mineral or a supplement is due to a nutrient imbalance.
Yeah.
So most people, when they say copper toxicity, it's actually an imbalance with vitamin A and also a little bit of zinc. So
Right.
vitamin A works with copper to actually increase ceruloplasmin, which allows your body to mobilize copper into the cells and also transport iron out of the tissues
Right.
into the blood to make hemoglobin and red blood cells.
Hmm.
And many people, when they hear copper toxicity, they're like, oh, you take more copper and it causes all these issues when it's, in fact, a vitamin A deficiency. And vice versa. When people say vitamin A toxicity, it's really called vitamin A stagnancy because you develop so much vitamin A where it has nowhere to deploy or be utilized because there's no copper in the body. So vitamin A and copper work together. If one is missing, then the other one becomes toxic. And
Right.
that's something that I recently learned like a year and a half ago, because originally I first was one of those people who was like, copper toxicity. If you take too much
Yeah.
copper, it's bad for you. And another thing is I've heard people talk about estrogen dominance.
Hmm.
But what's funny is that copper is one of the most androgenic minerals in our bodies. And when you look at the studies of estrogen dominance in copper, it's
Yeah.
actually basing it off of elevated serum levels. And the problem with blood work is that a lot of blood work, at least in our adult, is inverse. If you have elevated serum of a certain type of mineral, it's
Yeah.
usually a sign that your mineral got displaced into your blood and it got replaced with something else. So if you have elevated serum copper, most likely you're deficient in copper. And if
In
you
the
have,
in the cells specifically.
yes, intracellular
Yeah.
deficiency. And
Yeah.
that's why you see cancer patients where almost over 80% of cancer patients, they're all anemic. But in reality, it's because all the iron that's supposed to be in their blood, it got dysregulated and it got stored into their tissues. And
Yep.
cancer feeds off of iron. So
Hmm.
when you have iron that has been locally deposited into a specific targeted area, that's what
Yeah.
causes tumors and cysts. And that's what
Well,
causes,
you get into the senescent cell conversation, you know what I mean? Especially when you're
yes.
eating all that junk, you know? You have all of this like oxidized iron essentially that the body has no idea what to do with. So it's going to try to store it away in tissue and clump it all together. And next thing you know is you have a tumor, right? Because you have all the senescent cells collecting together. And that's something that, we talk about in the functional med space, but, people don't really talk about. Yes, fasting does a really good job of like cleaning up senescence, especially if you do the longer ones. But there's so many other tools today, like ergothioneine, the peptide FOX04DRI, like they're amazing for cleaning up cell senescence. And when you pair that with managing, your copper vitamin A relationship specifically with iron, you get to clean up the terrain so much easier, right? Like people even talk about, I've had people that have, used different bioregulators to try to raise their testosterone, and basically their lifts go up, their body comp changes, like everything changes. But when they do their blood work, their test levels are lower, and then they get worried and they're like, what the heck happened? All that means is that the test is in the cell, it's
Yeah,
binded in the cell, and it's not in the
exactly.
plasma. you know
Yeah.
so that's the one thing with blood work in 2025 is we don't like we're still at a place where we cannot look at what's intracellular versus what's just in the plasma, and just because it's not in the plasma doesn't mean it's not in your body. It's just how do we mobilize it back into the cell or back into the plasma, sorry, which is what you were just talking about essentially.
Yeah, no, and like we said, like when you have so much iron buildup, it localizes, and that's what causes tumors. That's literally what caused my jaw tumor because a box of cereal is almost 180 milligrams of iron, and obviously with hepcidin, your body regulates and you absorb maybe 10 to 15% of it, but that's still almost 18 to 20 milligrams of iron per day. That's a
But
ridiculous.
we're being oxidized,
Yeah,
literally we're
you're
being
rusting.
We're being loaded with iron. They're spraying metals in the air, where all sorts of chemicals are inside of us. Some people got metal in their mouth from fillings and whatnot. And then everyone's being radiated with non-native EMF. Like we're literally
Yes.
turning into like metal honing beacons, essentially. And it's like all this metal is a conductor for inflammation, for non-native EMF and Wi-Fi and radiation. And then we want to know why everyone is being radiated slowly and having all of these chronic health conditions come up. It's like we have to look at the minerals that buffer radiation. What did they do back in the day when there was a big radiation explosion? Iodine,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
So you
And
don't
then
you don't absorb radioactive iodine. So you
yes,
saturate your thyroid because they
exactly.
know that's the most important hormone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
So
crazy because if you think about the word, like the molecular name of rust, it's iron
mhm,
oxide.
yeah,
And, you
exactly.
talk about oxidative stress, it's literally your body rusting from the inside out. And
Mhm,
what's also crazy, something that I learned probably about 6 months ago, is that copper significantly absorbs red light. I didn't know this, but
mhm.
copper absorbs red light and iron absorbs blue light. I didn't
Well,
know this.
so you actually brought that to my attention on and when you figured that out a couple months ago, and it actually makes so much sense because we know people that get, this is where the whole red light panel thing comes in. People who get sunlight, they always generally have better skin until they get to a place where they start overdoing it. You know what I mean? Like as soon as like in what's collagen made of? Like so much of our collagen is made of copper, and hence why there's this big craze now on the GHKCU copper peptide because it's working along the same line of things,
Yeah.
essentially. And, for me, people are like, what do you think about copper peptide? Copper peptide. I'm like, I honestly just like taking the copper tincture, copper sulfate.
Yeah.
It does the job just fine. I don't need to inject myself and everything like that.
Of
But,
course.
to
Too.
each your own, the results are there. And when you pair taking your copper, obviously with your vitamin A and vitamin C, but then specifically are getting sunlight, people are like, I'm freaking glowing. I'm like, yeah, minerals and sunlight.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. Copper peptides are extremely expensive and they don't have to be because GHKCU is literally just it is a peptide comprised of, and your body makes that peptide, but it's literally comprised of glycine, histidine, lysine, and copper. That's
Mhm.
literally what GHKCU stands for. So if you consume plenty of copper and then you also consume plenty of glycine, histidine, and lysine, which those three amino acids are usually found in most proteins and also gelatin. If
Mm.
you consume protein and copper, your body's gonna make GHKCU.
Literally have some copper and some bone broth or some gelatin, and you're like
Yes.
just fine. And you're gonna get the exact
You
same
probably get
result.
more. Your body
But
more.
I get to inject something blue into my skin, and that's cool.
Yeah,
That's why people
exactly.
do that. But to each their own. So what would you say the biggest thing you've noticed with like high dose copper? Because that is such a taboo subject for many people, unless they've read Jason Hommel's The Copper Revolution. So what have you seen since you've kind of built your product line? I'm sure you get lots of testimonials. Like, where have you noticed it maybe have the biggest impact with individuals?
So with copper, I notice a lot of benefits with skin and
Mhm.
also my own personal testimonial that I made a video talking about how
Yeah.
I completely reversed psoriasis, keratosis pilaris,
For
and
anyone that isn't that's watching and has not seen that video, go over to Chris's page. It's like 11 minutes or so. So I think
yeah,
I watched it like 3 times and I
it's
sent it to 20 people.
the title is the effect of excess iron and zinc. Yeah,
I'm
but
surprised
basically
Instagram didn't take it down, to be honest.
I know, dude. I gotta reshare it again because I don't think everyone saw it. But yeah, so I noticed that copper significantly helps with skin, and the reason why is because I'd never burn in the sun. Like with high dose copper, like I don't burn at all. And I live in Florida in the United States, and I live in South Florida.
Hot.
And when it gets hot, it gets hot. It's like 105 degrees plus humidity. So
Mhm.
you're like torching out there. And I could sit in the sun for like 6 hours and just be fine. But when I was younger, I used to burn in the sun. Back then, we didn't know any better. I would put sunscreen and I
Sunblock.
burn.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But now I could sit in the sun for 6 hours all day. I could be on my computer or read a book outside in the sun, and I don't torch in the sun, and I don't even get sunburn. If anything, my skin looks better after being in
Mhm.
the sun all day. So
And
that's
to
one.
those listening, the main ingredient in copper or copper tone is copper, which you brought to my attention. I'm like, Geez, wow, that's what a surprise, you know what I mean? That the pharmaceutical world is just playing on
And a bunch
minerals.
of other shit too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. A bunch of other shit being the key, right? So let's just focus on making sure we have our copper up. And this goes down a whole another rabbit hole of like, in the past we used to do all our farming with copper. There was just so many more
Yes,
minerals. We used to use copper piping, everything like that. I mean, even in Europe, there's still a lot of copper piping over there. Meanwhile, here everything is PEX and
plastic.
plastic and all of that. You know what I mean? So, the biggest things that I've noticed with clients as well, like I've definitely noticed a lot of changes with like, skin conditions like eczema and psoriasis improving and getting better. I wouldn't say it's like the only thing, but definitely a big needle mover. I've anecdotally noticed the improvement in like I don't burn in the sun and whatever, although I am fair skinned like you, but it's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
even when you go to hot places, like you could still burn and whatnot, you know?
Yeah, no, I
So I've
used to
noticed,
burn, man, and I'm tan, I'm
yeah,
Hispanic. I
yeah,
used to when I was younger, I used to sit in the sun, like, I'll
yeah,
play soccer or football,
yeah.
and I would burn. I'm like, "Why am I burning?" And
Hmm.
I would be peeling and everything, and
Yeah,
now I never burn at all.
yeah.
And another benefit I also noticed from elevated copper intake is the mental benefit, because
Mhm.
copper is also important for, norepinephrine and dopamine production. I notice, like, I don't really get, like, down. Like, it's weird. It's like my dopamine is always, like, on overdrive, and something horrible could happen, whether it's business, something happens where I'm supposed to get something and I don't get it, or if I lose money trading, if I'm trading on the markets and I lose a lot of money, like, I don't know why my mental, and I will attribute most of it to copper because I never used to be like this until I started taking copper, where
Mhm.
I don't I have like, a healthy balance of, like, regulating my emotions, and I don't think a lot of people talk about that.
Where it's an interesting way that you put it, where I've seen it in clinic is it's almost like adrenal protective, where
Yeah,
it's like when the bad things happen and you go into that norepinephrine adrenal response, it's like the response isn't as like high, so to speak. So there isn't the low after. Since I've been doing it for the last, I don't know. So context, I got like a toddler at home, wife's pregnant, I run a business, like 12-hour days with clinic, it's busy all the time. And I would say the last probably about 6 months I've been using her stuff. I have not needed to take any adrenal glandulars in the last 6 months. I've just been taking copper. Meanwhile, in the past, it would be like I would need an adrenal glandular. 2 months later, I need it again because life is just like stressful and
yeah,
hectic. But honestly, since doing your high dose multis with the copper, I haven't needed to take anything and I haven't even felt like I've needed it, to be honest.
yeah,
And my adrenals have been testing well. I have a bioresonance device, so I get to check these things. And I've noticed the same thing with clients where it's like as long as they keep doing this, they have this like buffering system. Like it buffers the adrenals. And even going back into the copper peptide side of things, it's very neuroprotective. It actually
yeah,
helps create the myelin, which protects our nerves. They've talked about the GHK copper peptide in relation to more degenerative health conditions. So going back to like all we need to do is have collagen with, or like a gelatin and a bone broth and copper, and all of a sudden we're protecting our neurology. Like it could be that simple. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So definitely, like I've definitely clinically seen that for sure, just more from the perspective of adrenal protective and just people having more capacity, which is really what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't have worded it any better. I mean, like you said, I don't feel the adrenal effects of when something bad happens. I don't
Mhm.
feel like my blood pressure like raise like that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I don't get that adrenaline spike that I used to if something bad happens. So
Right.
that's one of the things that I did notice is from elevating my copper, I do feel overall better. Like I will use the term wellness, like my overall mental wellness is just like elevated. Yeah, it's one of the biggest things. I also notice my joints feel a lot better too,
Mhm.
from obviously because copper increases collagen
Copper.
synthesis.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
helps lay down new collagen because,
Well, it's like the ingredient, you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like you give the body the ingredients and all of a sudden things can happen. A question on the copper front is, you don't in your product, yes, you have the food grade vitamin C, and we've also talked about vitamin A. So, in relation to displacing iron. So let's say someone's anemic, right? They start taking copper. First question would be like, how much copper or what should they be working up to if they're anemic, essentially?
yeah.
What would be your recommendation?
Yeah, so generally copper, I mean, it sounds crazy, but you want to be consuming more copper than you're consuming iron throughout the day.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
unfortunately, all our food is everything has iron. So if you this is the sad reality of how they like designed our food system.
Yeah.
If you consume 5 milligrams of copper and you consume 15 milligrams of iron throughout the day, your body's going to favor the iron absorption. And you're basically that iron is going to get stored in your tissues.
Well,
That's
you're
not
just creating more of the same cascade, which
yeah.
essentially is gonna lead to some sort of growth or tumor because the body's gotta put the iron somewhere.
Yes, and there's not enough copper to actually regulate it. Because if you think about it, and this is something that I've been researching a lot, is the concept of having an iron dominant redox or a copper dominant redox. And for those of you who don't know, redox is essentially the state of how your body it's reduction and oxidation. So in your body, you have two processes. You have oxidation of minerals and nutrients, and then you have reduction of minerals and nutrients. Our body thrives in a reduction environment where essentially most of the minerals that you need to be placed intracellularly, they have to be reduced. And when people take supplements or minerals and they don't experience the benefits, it's because their redox and their reduction is not functioning properly. So some of the things that I learned is that throughout our lifetime, most of our growth and regeneration occurs when we are in a copper dominant redox. And once we hit a certain threshold of iron accumulation, we shift into an iron dominant redox. And that is what essentially is aging. That's what causes aging. So they say, like, after 18 years old, you stop growing or whatever. But in reality, it's after you hit 18, you hit a certain threshold of iron accumulation where your iron surpasses your copper. And going down that rabbit hole has been mind blowing to me because essentially it completely debunks everything we know about aging. How people think
Mhm.
aging is a time related thing, but it has nothing to do with time or how many years pass. It has to do with your iron accumulation.
Over
So
time.
instead of thinking of it like I'm 60 years old or I'm 70 years old, you could think of it like I have 20,000 milligrams of iron stored in my body, 40,000. Like you think of it as a number.
Yeah.
And, when you're in a copper dominant redox environment, that's what allows your body to grow from mechanical stress. Like if you're jumping, that's why basketball players, they grow taller. That's what allows your connective tissues to heal. That's what allows your skin to heal. That's why those jokes about like after you hit 30 years old, your joints start cracking and stuff.
Yeah.
It's because of the iron accumulation that occurs.
Yeah, and
So
then you think of, like, the social environment around, like, "Oh, let's have pizza and beer," and, like, it's just,
yeah,
like, iron bombs every
yes.
weekend, and you wanna know why it starts to accumulate over time. I noticed that too now that you mention it. When I started taking copper, like, all these little, like, scrapes and cuts, I was like, "Why won't these heal? Like, what the heck is going on?" Since I started doing high dose copper, it's like a day, 2 days, like, boom. I was mountain biking and I scraped on my elbow pretty good, and within a week, it was, like, completely scabbed, like, well on its way to healing that would have
Yeah.
taken weeks beforehand.
Yeah, even my hands, dude. What's funny is that some people make fun of me because my hands are like my
Soft?
hands never callous. They're always
Yeah, they're
soft.
soft. Yeah,
And
all
it's
the
so
copper.
people make fun of me because like even if I go to the gym and I deadlift heavy or if I lift something heavy, like they get torn up and then the
Yeah,
next day they're like perfect.
they're
Or if
healed.
I go to the
Yeah, yeah,
range, I'll shoot because like when you're shooting like a lot, your
yeah,
hands get worn up like if you're actually lifting and
right,
your skin peels
yeah.
and my hands are like perfectly
You got
soft.
baby skin.
I literally got
Okay,
baby skin.
so someone's anemic, they're taking copper, how much copper? Give them, like, a milligram range.
I'd say start at 10 milligrams per day. If you're
Right,
taking copper, even the book Copper Revolution, it talks about how like if you're gonna start taking copper and you want to get on that journey, the minimum you have to start at is 10 milligrams a day. And the reason being is because on average, most people they absorb close to 2 to 5 milligrams of iron per day because
right,
hepcidin helps you regulate your iron intake. So even if they're consuming 20 milligrams of iron, they're only really absorbing about 2 to 5 milligrams. And like I said, if you're consuming more copper than you're consuming iron, then that's when you're really resaturating your body with copper because
right,
essentially in your body you have a competition between copper and iron. And if
right,
iron is saturating all the enzymes, that's when you're going to have health issues. So starting at 10 milligrams a day is a good start. You could do it with drops or capsules
yeah,
or whatever it is.
yeah.
I prefer
Well,
the
we're
drops.
talking about your products, so you got the drops, right? So ten
Yeah,
ten
yeah.
drops is basically 10 milligrams. And, we've talked about a possible little reformulation, but until that happens, vitamin A and vitamin C are also important in the copper
Yes,
conversation. So,
exactly.
what are the ratios if so let's say if someone was doing 10 milligrams of copper, how much vitamin C, how much vitamin A needs to be in that equation for this to work and not create other issues?
So I spoke to you about this
Yeah.
literally last week. I was originally under the impression that vitamin A, you need 10,000 IUs per 10 milligrams of
Yeah.
copper, but I was
Mhm.
actually wrong. And it's actually 10,000 IUs of vitamin A per 1 milligram. And, once I discovered that, I'm like, oh shit, like we actually need way more vitamin A because vitamin A it increases the utilization of copper. So
And
there
then
would
you
be,
think about all the retinols in the skincare world and like all of that.
yeah.
It all falls under this vitamin A conversation.
Yeah, and I never thought about that. I'm like, "Wait, vitamin A increases the utilization of copper, and I'm only taking like 40,000 IUs a day, but I'm
It's
taking
like
40
nothing.
milligrams of copper a day." And there's like a diminishing return where I was feeling with copper. I'm like, "Why am I like, yeah, like my joints feel better, but they don't feel like that much better."
Right.
And I started doing research on it, and I'm like, "Oh shit, like I need to be taking way more vitamin A." And
Right.
I've been on 2 weeks now of
Mhm.
increased vitamin A, and I feel so much better, like,
And
I'm only
you're talking like 400,000 IUs of vitamin A?
yes,
Wow.
yes.
Okay.
400,000 IUs of vitamin A. Obviously, I don't
For
plan
long
on
term.
maintaining that, yeah, long
Yeah.
term.
Yeah.
But throughout my entire life, I'm almost positive I've been vitamin A deficient, and then as
Right.
well as, I would probably taper it off to like 100,000 IUs because
Mhm.
I don't always take 40 milligrams of copper per day.
Totally.
Some days I'm fasting, some days I eat 1 meal a day, so I only
Yeah.
get about minimum, I get 10 milligrams of copper,
Yeah.
but I'm not
And I feel
always
like the other thing too is if you're working on a certain health concern and that health concern gets to a place where it's pretty good, there's no need to keep the dose up that high. I feel like most people, 10 drops of copper, 100,000 IU vitamin A, and then how much vitamin C would they have to put into that equation?
yeah, vitamin C with 10 milligrams of copper, I would say anywhere between 4 to 6. Now, there's a
Wow.
lot of stigma where like 4 to 6 grams. There's a lot of stigma where they say, "Oh, vitamin C depletes copper," but as we said, like with the testosterone example, the
Mhm.
iron example in terms of anemia, vitamin C doesn't deplete copper. Vitamin C, it increases the reduction capabilities of your body
Right.
and
Right.
reduces copper into the cuprous form, which is
Mhm.
what your intracellular needs. So when you take higher vitamin C, you have a greater reduction capacity, and then all your copper is getting shuttled into your cells. So when like all these studies are done and they say, vitamin C lowered the serum levels of this patient's copper levels, it really shuttled it into the
Into
cells.
the cell, which is why it's not in the serum, which is what we
Yes.
want. Right.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
want
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
And they come up with a conclusion with something else, and they say, "Oh, it's bad. Don't take vitamin C." And then that's what causes this whole mental,
Yeah.
gymnastics of, "No, I'm
Yeah.
not taking vitamin C with copper."
Now, on the vitamin C front, 4 to 6 grams is a decent amount. I feel like people are going to have loose bowels. Is there a difference between like, the ascorbic acid vitamin C and like, your
Oh,
areola
yeah.
vitamin C that you have? Like, maybe touch on that a little bit.
No, there's a major difference. I don't take absorbic acid. I take strictly only sodium ascorbate and acerola cherry. I was originally taking a lot of acerola cherry extract, but you have to get a lot like I told you my whole journey of the phlebotomies and stuff like that
Yeah.
to detox
Uh-huh.
iron from my lifetime. But you
Yeah.
have to take a lot of vitamin C from acerola cherry, so I just started taking sodium ascorbate and it's been helping.
Well, actually, let's touch on that quick. We got a couple of minutes here. So you basically made yourself anemic to a
Yeah.
degree.
Yeah, no, I did. So basically, long story short, so people understand why I did this is I've been on a journey to because I grew up my whole life without eating copper. I wasn't eating copper. I wasn't consuming vitamin A.
Yeah.
I was consuming a lot of processed foods high in iron.
Well,
So
the problem with guys like us is that we have fast metabolisms and we're lean, and so it's like you can
yes.
eat anything you want and you won't get fat, but you'll get sick, which is
Yeah.
that was my life too.
And the side effects too. Like you'll
Mhm,
get all the joint pains and stuff.
mhm.
So, yeah, growing up, I consumed so much iron laden foods that, after researching the effects of excess iron and iron accumulation, I'm like, you know what? I want to reduce the systemic iron load of my body because I know for a fact I'm in an iron dominant redox. I know fact that the majority of my enzymes are saturated with iron instead of copper. So I started doing blood donations, and every single time I did a blood donation, I felt better and better. My joints felt better and everything, and they were healing faster. And I decided I'm going to do an experiment. I'm like, I'm going to do a phlebotomy. I'm going to do a phlebotomy every week,
Wow.
like 4 times a month. So
Crazy.
I was doing
And
that
you're
for,
supposed to do it like once every 4 months for the
yeah,
record.
it's one, a whole blood donation is once every 2 months, and then a
Okay.
double red cell is once every 4 months. But
Okay.
I was doing a 300 milliliter phlebotomy every single week.
Yeah.
And it was working for some time. I was taking my royalty, I was taking the copper, I was taking vitamin
Mm.
C, everything. I wasn't thinking I was taking everything at once.
Yeah.
And it was sustaining me. Like I was hovering around the 14 to 15 hemoglobin range and I was still
Right.
pretty good.
Yeah.
And then there was a time where I ran out of vitamin C. And,
Yeah.
me being in my head, I'm like, oh, I don't want to take absorbic acid, this lower quality vitamin C.
Yeah.
So I stopped taking it. And in my head, I'm like, oh, it shouldn't do anything to me. I could go without it. I
Yeah.
went 3 weeks. I went 3 to 4 weeks without taking vitamin C while continuing the phlebotomies. And I literally drove my hemoglobin from like 14 and a half or 15, which is still not on the optimal side, but it's just
Yeah.
under optimal.
Yeah.
I drove it all the way down to 9
Oh,
and I was
wow.
like really anemic. And
Wow.
that's when I was like, I would walk up the stairs and I would
Tired.
feel like I ran a sprint.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's also when I learned about the whole
And you
how
would say that you were doing that or that that happened because of the fact that you were donating blood, taking the copper, and not taking the vitamin C
yes.
with it.
Yes, and that's the thing because I originally in my head I'm like, "Oh, it's vitamin C." I'm like,
Yeah, yeah.
maybe it's a gimmick, I don't know, even
Yeah.
though I, like, share advice, sometimes I question everything that
Oh, of
I say
course. You
also.
always gotta question things, right? That's
Yes,
how you
that's how
learn.
you learn.
Yeah,
So,
that's
I
it.
literally didn't take vitamin C for a whole month, body was not producing any hemoglobin or anything, and
Yeah,
what's funny is, how I told you I recently got labs again?
yeah.
My hemoglobin, I'm still this is weird because I've never experienced this before. I'm still technically on paper anemic, but my red blood cell count is high. So my red blood cell count is high, but my hemoglobin is low.
Low. That's interesting.
And I don't feel like I'm dying anymore. But
Yeah,
my hemoglobin barely moved, and I know why. So I'm sitting here trying to biohack my body. I'm like, if I take more copper, zinc competes with the absorption of copper. I'm not going to take zinc. So I'm
right.
over here lowering my zinc intake, increasing my copper intake. And I didn't know this, but apparently zinc is one of the main cofactors for heme synthesis. I
Okay.
didn't.
So that would be why it didn't raise up because you were bringing your zinc down to
Yes.
increase copper absorption.
Yeah, so
Okay.
so I'm trying to, like, biohack the body. I don't
Yeah,
really like that word, but I'm
yeah,
trying to, like, cheat the body and
yeah.
make things happen faster,
Well,
like, I'm
you're
gonna
just
love.
you're pulling on levers. That's what we're doing here. We're
Yes,
pulling on different levers to make things happen, essentially.
and then I realized I'm like, it didn't do shit, like, I'm like,
Yeah,
2 months went by and my hemoglobin barely moved, why is that? And then
right.
my alkaline phosphatase is low, which that is a marker of low zinc
Yeah,
because that is an indicator of your zinc enzymes functioning. So, yeah, my hemoglobin barely moved, but my red blood cell count went up.
yeah.
So, yeah, that's when I learned I'm like, okay, yeah, no, you still need to take zinc.
So you're not donating blood right now. You're working on getting your levels back
Yes.
up. Yeah,
Yes. Even though I feel good. Like
yeah.
I could lift heavy again. Like I don't
Right,
get tired, I don't get that anemic feeling, but on
right.
paper it's I'm still anemic on paper. That's why I say like lab work is funny because sometimes it's also
Mhm.
mental, you know?
Totally. It's like, and again, going back to the testosterone example, it's like, you have to go on the subjective experience that someone is feeling. If they feel good and there's no reason to think otherwise, like it's good because it means like we don't have the definitive nature of intracellular testing versus plasma testing, right? Like we don't know the difference. And, this is a very similar situation where it's like you feel good, your blood markers aren't quite there. Obviously, you know what you were doing to mess with your hemoglobin. So stop doing that, get the levels back up, and then you're back to donating your
Yeah.
iron, getting it out of your body.
Yeah, it's kinda like I'm sure you've seen the little meme of the IQ bell
Yeah,
where it's like the
I
dumb
know. It's always,
person.
man.
I was
I'm
in the middle.
Dude, after 15 years of like, holistic nutrition, quantum physics, bodybuilding, strength and conditioning, I'm back to like, I know nothing. It's the best place to be. Like, I know nothing. I have a few things that work well for people that has, kind of built my business and built my career. But, I go listen to people on the biochem side, the peptide world, and I'm like, holy, like, I don't know anything,
Yeah.
So back to your company, your products, like, you know, where if someone was like, or I'll tell from my perspective, I usually recommend the Divine Need, the Royalty, because I work with a lot of Canadians, and the Copper. And then they kind of get vitamin A up here and vitamin C up here. So, with those three, some people talk about 5 capsules is a lot. If the average person is deficient, like, should they be doing 5 capsules for 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, a year before even considering coming down? Like, what are your thoughts?
I think, well, the thing is that it might sound like a lot, but if you're
Mhm.
taking everything individually, you would easily be taking 30 capsules a day, because you're getting in 5 capsules, you're getting 500 milligrams of magnesium, which most products, that's already 3 capsules right there. That's 2 to 3 capsules. And
Yeah.
then on top of that, you're taking boron, and the boron you're getting is like a 3 to 6 milligram capsule. So
Yeah.
you're going to be taking almost like 10 capsules just to get 50 to 100 milligrams.
It's like 7 products in one,
If
basically.
you were to take the royalty of the divine just 5 capsules and actually divide it into all the products, you would have like 30 pills laid out. That's
Yeah.
also why I don't recommend taking 5 capsules at once unless
Right.
you're somebody who has an extreme appetite and you eat a giant meal.
Yeah, because you
Or
can't even digest that amount of minerals, like,
yeah.
you gotta split it up.
Yeah, exactly. So essentially, if you take 5 capsules at once, it's equivalent to taking like 30 different minerals. So that's why
Yeah.
you're supposed to divide it up. You're
Right.
supposed to, it's a supplement, right?
Yeah.
It's not a replacement. It's meant to, every time you eat a meal, it supplements your food. So if you eat breakfast, you take 1 or 2 capsules, you get a little bit of boron, a little bit of magnesium, a little bit
Yeah.
of copper, a little bit of iodine. You get a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And then, lunch, you do it again, you get a little bit of everything. So it's just one of those things that's meant to supplement your diet and to give you a little bit of everything together all in one, as
Yeah.
opposed to having to worry about, oh, did I take my zinc or did I take my K2 or did I take my vitamin, magnesium or chromium or
Totally.
selenium, where everything is just all there.
Yeah, I definitely gotta say a big thank you to you to, like, putting it all together in one product where it's like, yeah, I don't need to worry about 7, 8 different vitamins and in
Yeah.
the right dosages. It's like, okay, I gotta take 3 pills with breakfast and 2 with dinner, and, like, that's it. And then I put my copper in my coffee, and I usually take my vitamin A in the morning before I leave the house, and I got my vitamin C split up throughout the day. And it's working well for a lot of people. So, thank you. I know we chatted about some like possible formulations. Anything you want to like trickle in here or just leave it for now?
Yeah, no, I mean, the royalty and the divine, it's gonna be even stronger. It's
Yeah.
gonna be better.
Awesome.
And the reason why it's gonna be better is because I'm gonna add more chromium. A lot of chromium supplements are sold at 200 mcgs per capsule. It's gonna have more cobalt, which
Mhm.
is important for EPO production and methylation. And
Oxygen carrying capacity.
yes. It's gonna have more, it's gonna have vanadium in it, which is
Mm,
it's important for blood sugar regulation. Same with the chromium. So vanadium and chromium have a synergistic effect. Right now it has chromium in it, but it only has 100 mcgs per 5 capsules. So
mm,
I'm gonna make it where almost every single capsule is 200 mcgs because
wow.
there's also a lot of studies where they say about a milligram of chromium per day is good enough to actually properly regulate blood sugar.
Right.
So I'm going to just do 1 milligram of chromium for 5 capsules. So every
Mhm.
single time you take a capsule with a meal, it's
Yeah.
regulating your blood sugar.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's gonna improve a lot. There's gonna be more chromium, vanadium. I'm gonna add strontium in there for your
Mm,
bones. I'm gonna add a
yeah.
little bit for your bones. I'm gonna add a little bit of
Okay.
lithium in it. So I'm gonna
Okay.
add everything in there.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah. So
lithium is super important for the nervous system. I use that a lot in clinic, and we just have to look at like today's age and what people need in their everyday to manage the like toxic load, the stress load, the blood sugar load. Like, how many people are freaking diabetics these days because of all the inflammatory food that we're eating, right?
yeah.
So awesome, man. Thank you for taking the time and like going through it. I'm sure we could chat all day long, but we wanted to do this chat for a while and just give people a little bit of like, face behind the brand as the guy who is like a lot of us. We got sick. We is invested a lot of time, energy into researching and putting things together and finding solutions that we're then, now bringing to market to help other people. So thanks for taking the time and excited for the next one. I'm excited for
Yeah,
whenever we do this
I'm
again.
excited, man, and yeah, I'm not sure if I shared this before, but during my bodybuilding days, I also had a supplement company. So I was into
Okay.
sports nutrition, but I was selling fat burners with ephedra, and, so, like, pre-workouts, creatine, all that stuff. So,
Yeah,
the business and formulation aspect of it, I kind of already had that knowledge from back then.
right.
But obviously with the health experience and all that, that's when I'm like, okay, holistic health. I want to make something that actually benefits people, minerals, do all that stuff. I'm also going to come out with a product that it's a salt product for your food. So it's
Ooh,
going to be,
amazing.
yeah, it's going to be basically Mediterranean sea salt cut with potassium chloride because everyone they salt their food, but most people are potassium deficient. But you can't
Mhm.
get potassium from just one. You can't do like potassium chloride or just potassium
You need
sulfate.
multiple sources.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna do a salt product for food where it's basically half sodium chloride from Mediterranean sea salt, and
Yeah.
it's gonna be half potassium chloride without
Wow.
all the other extra shit. Because there are some salt products like that, but they have like silicates and aluminum and stuff like that. So
Dude, you're gonna mess with the blood pressure industry too.
yeah, no, I'm going for everything, man. I'm trying to fix everything because people feel so much better when they just from upping their potassium. It's
Yeah.
crazy because
Dude,
everyone
I
has
mean,
so much sodium.
the body is so simple. Like, get your electrolytes in order, get your minerals in order, and like the body can thrive. But we're on the same page. It's all about terrain theory, and making sure the terrain is, more alkaline. The terrain is in a place where it can regenerate itself, and the body is so damn smart. We just got to give it what it needs.
Yeah, that's
Awesome, dude.
it's simple. It's simple.
Thanks so much. Until next time, okay? Appreciate having you on here, and we'll definitely have to do this again.
Yeah, man, for sure. Take care, brother.